An opioid use disorder is a treatable illness that is defined by an individual who compulsively uses opioids despite negative consequences. So despite bad things happening in their life or to their health because of their use of opioids, they're not able to stop using.
Can you recover? For sure. I've seen it thousands of times, seen people recover. Recovery is different for everyone, and their recovery pathways is different for everyone. Their treatment options are different, whether it's harm reduction, abstinence, long-term treatment, halfway house. But you can recover, and your recovery will look different in different stages. One of the most important things I think with recovery and people recovering is giving them the ability, whether it's housing, education, just some tools that will help them advance in the future.
Evidence-based treatment for opioid use disorder can mean a lot of things for different people. When we think about what is evidence-based, there are folks who have spent years doing studies and doing research on specific populations to see what intervention works best or if a specific intervention is effective in a certain population. I work with a Latino population. Often evidence-based interventions haven't been tested on our population, and so we have to make the best decisions that we can, and sometimes we need to do cultural modifiers in order to make sure that the treatment plan that we're putting together is evidence-based and also culturally relevant. You know, when we're talking about evidence-based treatment, it is very unique to the person. It's looking at what is this person's needs, assessing what is, their resilience factors, their recovery capital, and then using those interventions to kind of align with not just what their needs are, but who is this person? So how do they best understand treatment, and how are they best going to be able to move forward?
That's an excellent question. There's lots of ways to find out about the pathways to and the pathways of recovery. One resource that's available to people is the Recovery Research Institute. These are the people who are really doing the work to find out what's working and what's not working. For so long, it's been a matter of opinion. Each of us have an opinion about what we think works. As a person in long-term recovery, I have my experience with what has worked for me, but just because that's worked for me, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going to be what works best for you. So to have some real research done that shows what's working for people is important. In many communities, there's peer recovery centers, and in those peer recovery centers, there's well-trained and knowledgeable, experienced people called recovery coaches. And recovery coaches typically have been exposed to or participated in various paths of recovery, and they're able to share their experience as well as to share resources on how to access various pathways. So they might be able to direct somebody to a 12-step meeting or to a SMART recovery meeting. They might know where there's a meeting of the Phoenix, etc. So they're able to bring people, show people, nearly literally hold people's hands as they bring them into the fold of different pathways.
Individual and group therapy are very important to the recovery process. One of the things that here at Gavin that we're most proud of is our recovery capital, and that's when our graduates and people that have completed the program come back and participate in some of our alumni groups. The advantage of having the group therapy is everybody gets to share, and that's where the recovery capital comes in. It's about working with other people, having the opportunity to help other people, to share with other people, and to really have the opportunity to explore your own self. And that won't happen in individual, because you'll hear something that somebody else says in group, and then people will expand upon that. So we are big believers in group therapy and think it's very important in the recovery process.
In my experience through the Phoenix, which is a support peer-to-peer recovery model, this model has a huge role. If you think about, the opposite of addiction is connection, creating these peer support groups are huge to really grow your life in recovery. Just because you're leaving or putting down substances and shifting a lot of things in your life, I think the more you can have shared experience with people, both, relating to some past experience and then how your life is getting bigger in recovery, I think that only promotes and strengthens recovery. And there's a lot of evidence to support that, peer recovery models and doing things together with people in shared experience really, really helps folks thrive.
So currently there are 3 medications that are approved for the treatment of opioid use disorder: methadone, buprenorphine, otherwise known as Suboxone, long-acting naltrexone, which is sometimes known as Vivitrol. Each of these medications is a little bit different, both in who would qualify, in what they do, and in some of their side effects. So really that's a discussion to have with your provider or your treatment team about what fits for you as far as the medication itself, but also what fits for your lifestyle. And how you want to move forward. So definitely it's an individual decision, and it is one of those things where if you try a medication and you find that it doesn't work, it is perfectly fine to try a different medication, to switch medications. Because really the goal is not to push one particular medication over another, it's to find the medication that works best for you and your recovery.
We get asked a lot of questions about the effectiveness of medications for opioid use disorder. Many people are worried about taking them because they view them as substituting one drug for another. They don't understand how a drug that maybe has a low level of opioids in it can possibly be effective in treating their opioid use disorder. When someone uses opioids, the opioid receptors in their brain are activated. When they stop using, the receptors are still there. And that's what causes people to go into withdrawal and experience withdrawal symptoms and cravings. The physical symptoms of these can be debilitating and are often one of the reasons that people have a lot of trouble staying in recovery. Medications for opioid use disorder work in a couple different ways. Some of them completely block the ability of opioids to latch on to the opioid receptors in the brain. Some of them do that, and they also offer a low dose of an opioid, which helps keep withdrawal and craving symptoms at bay. This allows people who had previously been unable to stay in recovery be able to tackle some of the other things that they have to in order to move forward in their recovery, because their physical symptoms are not so overwhelming that they can focus on some of the other issues as well.
The most effective treatment for a pregnant or postpartum person is the same as the most effective treatment for a non-pregnant or non-postpartum person. It's medication treatment with methadone or buprenorphine. These medications have been well studied in pregnancy. They are recommended by all the major societies that put out guidelines about the treatment of opioid use disorder in pregnancy. And it's important to remember that the crucial thing for a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby is making sure the pregnant person stays healthy throughout their pregnancy and in the postpartum period. And we know that these medications increase the likelihood that the pregnant person will stay in remission, will be healthy, will get prenatal care that they need, will not suffer from overdose or other complications. And in the postpartum period, that's crucial. There are a lot of stresses for any new parent, and we need to make sure that a person who is in recovery from an opioid use disorder gets the best possible treatment throughout that postpartum period, and that's medications with methadone or buprenorphine. These medications do not impede the ability of a person to parent. In fact, they support someone in their ongoing recovery so that they can meet all the stresses and demands of early parenthood.
I almost think the distinction between is someone sober or abstinent if they're using medications isn't really, it's not my, I can't really add by saying yes or no, because really, the addiction medicine and all these pathways to recovery have come a really long way, and there's more interventions that people are developing and testing and that are helping people. So I really think, for me, what I think the strongest indicator of is something working is if people are building their life, if they feel like they're getting better, if they can really define for themselves, like I feel like I am recovering and healing. I almost think, making the lane or distinction of are you abstinent or sober doesn't matter as much, because if we are truly creating communities that are supporting people in recovery, and again, kind of getting at some of the understanding that substance use disorder is really a symptom of underlying issues. And if folks are on pathways or using recovery pathways that are helping them get to some of those underlying issues so that they can really build their life and are feeling like they're healing, I feel like that's great, and we have to just create the environment and offer as many pathways as possible for people to be able to heal and feel like they're building their life.